You're listening to the Men's Dating Mastery Podcast with host Alec Chase, bringing you the experts in dating, sex, and relationships.
Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of the Men's Dating Mastery Podcast. In this episode, I'm speaking with Lesley Edwards on the topic of men's so-called commitment issues. Lesley's a life, dating, and relationship coach with Mars Venus Success Coaching and has been licensed and certified by Dr. John Gray. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it's because John Gray is the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. He's also an internationally recognized expert in psychology, gender communication, as well as personal and professional growth. In my conversation with Lesley, we dispel the myths surrounding men and their commitment issues, discuss inherent gender differences and how they drive our behavior. We talk about what men need in order to enter a committed relationship in a way that doesn't threaten their freedom, and the importance for a man to be on his life's path. We also identify the value of dating different people. As in every episode, we conclude with Lesley offering tangible advice that you can apply to improve your dating life immediately. Because after all, only applied knowledge is power. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review on iTunes or on whatever your favorite podcast directory is. Without further ado, enjoy the show. Hey, Lesley, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Alec. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Lesley, you're currently a life and relationship coach with Mars Venus Success Coaching, right?
Yes.
Can you briefly tell me a little bit about what you do and how you got into it?
Yeah, totally. So my primary focus is dating and relationship coaching. And for me, I hated dating. It was such a struggle and I felt like I read everything on it. And for me, relationships has always been a deep passion of mine. Like when I would meet people, I would immediately want to know if they were dating someone and if they were, how they met. And it's just been the thing that has always light me up. And so when I realized that I could actually do that as a career, Mars Venus and Dr. John Gray's work resonated so much with me. I remember I was working at a job that I really, really disliked. And I found that they were having a conference call and John Gray was hosting the call. I couldn't believe it. It was literally the middle of winter and I was sitting in my car for this conference call to Las Vegas and John Gray answered the phone. Like my heart almost stopped. And that moment, that call, I knew that this was what I was supposed to be doing with my life. And so fast forward 3 years and here we are.
Oh, that's a fantastic story. So few people get the opportunity to, discover their passion, let alone pursue it. And it sounds like you found yours. So always a pleasure to hear a story like that. You wrote a blog post called Nobody Really Has Commitment Issues, which resonated very strongly with me. I was able to relate to it on a personal level, actually. And you mentioned in that post that men actually don't have trouble with commitment issues. So where does the stereotype that presents us guys as commitment phobes, where does that come from?
Yeah, so where I'm really coming from with around men and commitment, with commitment just as a general topic, is that men and women, we commit to things all the time, whether it's conscious or not. And the things that we're really committed to and how you know you're committed to something is it's really important to you, and or you produce results in those areas of life. For example, someone who's really committed to their career is likely spending time either developing themselves or finding the job that they want. It's clear that they have the result in their life based on how committed they are. And the cool thing about men and commitment is the power that men really get, like the power of the masculine, is through committing. So saying you're going to do something, giving your word to something and following through on that, like setting goals and breaking through whatever there is to break through to produce the result. That's how the masculine gains its power, is by overcoming challenge. So it's really interesting then that in the popular media, whatever you want to call it, that men get this bad rap for not committing. So it is interesting. I mean, and not that it doesn't happen for women. There is a lot of women that also men would say, wait a second, I found all the women who won't commit. But specifically what I find with men is because the masculine is also, gets your power from making commitments and following through. The other challenge of the masculine is the whole goal of freedom. That's the ultimate goal of the masculine is freedom, right? Freedom from constraints, which will often have men avoiding commitment in relationships if they perceive that the relationship would be constraining, which is often the case with men.
I'm a little confused in that respect. So, us guys, it seems like, our ability to commit is almost something that we associate with our masculinity. And yet we have this, fear of constraint, something that we perceive as something that may arise within a relationship. So how is it that the two can coexist, and how can guys reconcile between the two? This desire for, freedom and lack of constraint, and yet this, sense of power that we derive from making and following through on commitments?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question. So most of the perceptions that men have around experiencing relationships as a constraint are not necessarily true constraints. I know for any man who has actually experienced being in love, like the full, true, like the ultimate goal of love is total acceptance, right? When you are with someone where you can totally be yourself and be loved and accepted for that. And, similarly with your partner, that you provide that kind of space for your partner, is that the true goal of love is total freedom. And the essence of true love is true freedom. So that's really what there is for men to discover in relationships, is that when you actually have the right partner, that sense of freedom is there. There's nothing to compromise on in order to be in that relationship. It's actually a perfect match for the freedom and the being fully expressed in whatever their life's purpose is. And the beautiful marriage between the masculine and the feminine is that the goal of the feminine is all around love and relationships. So, and when I talk about the masculine and feminine, I mean, about 80% of men would identify with having a masculine core, 80% of women having a feminine core. So not necessarily that the masculine is speaking of men, but, 80% majority, is that women really are, the feminine really is the teachers of relationships, because the goal of the feminine is love, true love in relationships. It's really the quest for love and connectedness. So it's really a perfect match between the masculine and the feminine. And the openness to learning from the opposite is what provides such a gift in relationships.
So it sounds to me almost like, there's freedom to be had within the context of a relationship, but it's really a matter of, how guys approach them, how they perceive them, and the dynamics of that relationship. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, completely. And the biggest thing is actually bringing love to the situation. So when you have overlay love on top of all of those, the concerns, like the primitive concerns of the masculine around I don't want to give up my free time, or I don't want to lose my independence, or if I have to compromise, that means I have to lose. All of those kinds of ideas. If you actually bring love to those, whatever those challenges are, that's the key in order to see relationships as an access to freedom.
So I'd actually like to drill down on that a little bit deeper, if I could. Assuming a guy has found, a compatible partner, somebody who's really a good match for him, what needs for him to happen in order to be able to step into that relationship, willingly and freely, and without feeling like they're being, I hate to use this word. I'm just not thinking of a better one at the moment, but not without feeling coerced or like they're going against their own will. Like what needs to be in place for them other than, obviously the other person you mentioned, love being the other one. What else does a man need to feel like he's making the right decision for himself?
Yeah. So I find the primary driver with men, and it's funny because women will have their opinions about this, but with men, their main goal in relationships is really to make their partner happy. Like really, that's all men want, is to know that they can actually provide for and deliver on, the kind of life that would have their partner be happy. And, so many men, when relationships dissolve and break down, their number one complaint was, no matter what I did, I just felt like it wasn't enough. And so men really do, one of the biggest barriers is men feeling like, well, I'm not sure I can really give her everything she wants and needs to be happy. So the biggest thing around that is there is nothing that any of us can do that will make someone else happy. It's really an illusion. For men, you're not looking for making your partner happy, but happier. I know you definitely want them to be happier. Their sense of happiness has to come from within. And which is really key because, men will find these women who, are really needy or, where they can really come in and save the day, but they're still left at the end of the day like, oh, it's all on me. It's all on my shoulders. So choosing a partner that is already happy, who knows how to take care of herself, and then you get to be that, like the icing on the cake that is having their just taking their life to the next level, having them be happier, which is the same for everyone, right? But I find men get stuck more in this trap than women, where their partner's happiness is their responsibility, and they really take that to heart.
So what I'm hearing is if a guy is with a woman who might not necessarily have her own life together, he almost takes on the entire responsibility for her well-being. And when he can't do everything for her, he feels inadequate, versus where he's with a woman that does have her life together and he's able to just add that little more to make her life that much better than it already is. Then he's left with a sense of satisfaction because his woman is satisfied. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, completely. It's like the motivators for marriage are a little bit different with men and women, where there is, where it's said that women will find a partner and then visualize a future with that partner. Like they can just see a path when they have the right partner. For men, it's a little bit different. Men need to be able to see their goal, what they really want to accomplish, before they can find a partner. Because the mission and purpose of the masculine is first and foremost. Relationships are never the number one priority of the masculine, or very rarely, unless it is directly tied to their masculine purpose or mission. Whereas the feminine, number one motivator, their biggest driver is love and relationships. So often for women, where they will say, absolutely, the relationship is number one. For men, for the masculine, the power is in number one being the mission and purpose. So where women will find a partner and be able to visualize that future very easily and even be thinking of marriage first, for men, it really is about having whatever the goal is in mind, and being on their way to fulfilling whatever their mission and purpose is in life before they find a partner. And then it's interesting, Alison Armstrong talks about two different kinds of men. So once she calls it at the prince stage. And I love this because this really has always stuck with me, is you will find princes that either will want to build the kingdom together. So they'll find a partner and let's build it together. Or the other type is where they want to build the kingdom first and then find a queen. So find men in two different camps, but it's a different process for pursuing building a future between men and women.
Right. So it sounds like for the woman, it's more the manifestation of, love and an emotional bond, whereas for the man, it's to lead to a certain goal or a certain vision of their life together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, women are becoming so much more masculinized given, we're inside of most of our working world is inside of the masculine context, right? Which is all about producing results and setting goals. And so, women are not exempt from wanting to create, their fulfill on whatever they're passionate about or have a career that they love. And at their core, if they have a feminine core, then the focus is always still relationships and connectedness.
Right. And I guess the difference is between, a woman's work in life or a career and her life in the context of a relationship with her partner. Yeah.
And a woman's quest for love is always a higher priority than her quest for, fulfilling her life's passion.
Something you said a little earlier resonated very, very strongly with me. I just started having flashbacks from my own life appearing right before my eyes. But
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, even if I was to share a personal story from kind of very recently, I ended a relationship with that was actually going really well for the most part, but I just didn't feel like that's where I wanted to be at the moment. And, one of the things that my ex-girlfriend said to me, she's like, you know what, I think what your real issue is the fact that you haven't figured out your career. She goes, you just dropped your career, starting a new business. I think you need to figure that out first before you can be in a relationship with anybody.
Yeah.
What you just said really reminded me of that situation. I don't know if that was the truth behind it, but I'm sure an element of it was.
Yeah, it definitely is. And a lot of men report that their sense of themselves is highly tied to what they do or whatever their purpose or mission in life is. So for some, it's a career. For some, they identify it a bit differently. But it is the key component for men.
Here's a question I've actually been absolutely dying to ask someone for so long.
Okay, great.
And, it's this argument that I'm often presented with, and it comes from an evolutionary perspective. It argues that, men aren't biologically wired to pursue multiple partners, because that's a way for them to ensure that they can pass on their genes, while women are motivated to seek out commitment because they need, that support during their, pregnancy and childbearing years. And, this argument almost seems to pit men and women against each other because they seemingly have these very different or conflicting needs and traits. So how do we reconcile that in a society that's clearly based on monogamy, or is there something missing from this entire argument as a whole?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it sounds like we're doomed, right?
It does.
You have to, that one, this whole idea of compromise, that one of us has to give up on, our nature. So I think the key difference is in our evolution. So I can see how that existed in the beginning for survival, right? In order for a species to survive, it was based on men, having sex with as many partners as possible in order to, produce further generations. And so as we've shifted from that, over, a few thousand years, say, our goals are a bit different, right? We are far from the goal of survival at this stage. And it's moving more towards higher levels of consciousness where the goal is not survival. The goal isn't even procreation, but the goal really is more around fulfillment and love and actually being satisfied, and higher levels of, knowing yourself and really opening, higher levels of love. Those are only possible inside of monogamy, inside of the safe space of a committed relationship. So I think as the goals of society have shifted from survival, and I mean, most of our brain is still wired from, our origin. So only about 10% of our brain in terms of the neuroscience of it is actually the frontal cortex is our evolved brain, but 90% of our brain is completely the same as it was back then. So men have those tendencies. I mean, men are always going to notice other women, be sexually attracted to other women. And, in order to have, be totally fulfilled in life and experience full breadth of love and what that makes possible, then monogamy is our best access to that. So it's honoring that, men are absolutely going to be attracted to many women, and that's always going to be the case. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's not something that men have to act on or they're denying who they are. It can actually be, and I love this. I've heard John Gray and David Data talk about this, is men redirecting that like aliveness that comes with sexual attraction for any partner, and then redirecting that to their partner. Like you have that experience, you're out on the street, you see a beautiful girl, a short skirt, whatever it is that catches your eye, and actually like not denying that attraction, because that is like being fully alive in the moment. So it's not for men to deny that, but it's actually to refocus that energy to your partner and then get present to, oh my gosh, and I have this amazing woman in my life, and gosh, I'm so turned on by her. And then when you get home, it's like, and you could even share that. Man, there was this crazy, sexy girl that I saw today, and I immediately thought of you.
I'd have to absolutely agree with you in the fact that we've evolved as a species and our goals are different now. It's not merely just kill that deer and make sure you live to see another day. And I would argue that with 7 billion people on the planet, we've probably, transcended the need to procreate to assure the survival of the species. So I do agree that we're evolving more. And yet there's this aspect of our brains that is still with us.
Yeah.
And I actually just finished reading David Data's Weve Superior Man a few days ago, and my mind was absolutely blown when he when he tells you that yes, you can be attracted to another woman, but you don't need to act on it, at least not in a sexual manner. There are other ways of enjoying that feminine energy, and that was really profound. It was unlike, I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah, it's like what I love about it is one of the strengths of the masculine is being able to practice restraint. It's not like just going for whenever you feel like it, but really practicing restraint and holding back, which creates even more energy, even more sexual energy. It's just like it builds, everything builds, whether it's towards your passion in life or towards your partner.
I was hoping you could comment on something. It's an observation I've made through the years. People, when they go through their teens and their 20s, that's a time when people really date and explore their sexuality and really figure out what they're all about and what they want and what works for them and what doesn't. And yet I've met a lot of, or I've known personally a lot of guys who kind of skipped this stage of their lives. So they didn't date, didn't really have a girlfriend. Then they hit their 30s, they meet someone, get married, start a family seemingly overnight. And I've always wondered about these kind of unions. And the reason for that being is that I always felt like it's very important to date a few different people before you settle down, just because it's a learning experience. And I felt like some of these people might be getting into relationships a little prematurely without giving themselves the chance to really learn about themselves first. I was wondering if you could just share some thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's a few things that come to mind right away. So, I mean, absolutely, I liken it to, like learning a new skill. So, for example, archery, there are people who have had no practice. They've never picked up a bow before, and they could hit the bullseye on the first try, but it's not likely, right? Most of us, it's the same with dating. Some people can absolutely, the first person they fall in love with, it's like, wow, they hit the bullseye. And for most of us, it's not the case. For most of us, it takes practice. It takes experience, expert opinion, talking to other people, trial and error. So I would agree that having experience is definitely one of the things that has us get even clearer about who we are and about what we really want. It is interesting that you mentioned 30s for men and women, because I love this, because John Gray always talks about the highest rates of divorce happen around 27, 28. And that's because full maturity of self happens at 28. So not to say that you shouldn't get married before 28, but there's something that happens around 28, especially for women, because women, high levels of estrogen, like very accommodating, very pleasing, as they're growing up. And then when you get to 28, a lot of women, or at least men, will report at this time, it's like, oh, you've changed. And it's like, no, I just really know what I want now. And so I'm not willing to settle for what you wanted as my own, if that wasn't the case for them. So a lot of women have a really significant change in their sense of self around 28. And so I think men that, and also related to what we were just talking about in terms of men getting established and really getting established in their careers and feeling like they can provide, often doesn't really happen. Like their sense of that really matures around 28 or early 30s, depending on the career and, how many turns they took on their path to where they want to go. So, there's definitely pluses and minuses to once you get to your 30s, you're really established. A lot more men feel like, okay, I could support a family. I'm ready, like career's settled. I'm on my path. And so marriage just tends to be a natural evolution at that point.
That's actually interesting what you mentioned about women maturing at the age of 28. I don't know, I might be extrapolating here a little bit, but this thought just popped into my head, and I'm wondering if maybe that has something to do with the fact that a lot of older guys will prefer younger women. And it's funny, I've actually always been the opposite, but nevertheless, that's definitely a trend amongst a lot of guys. And I'm wondering if what you're saying is true and women tend to be a little bit more accommodating, in their early 20s, if that might be something that's attracting these guys that prefer younger women.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things, right? Definitely younger women, less cares, like more carefree, even more natural feminine energy, right? As women get older and more established and more rigid in their lives, their feminine glow can be diminished. Whereas with younger women who don't have cares in the world, are just like doing what they love, they have smiles on their faces, it's just like, it's so attractive to the masculine because it's just like the full expression of the feminine. And that's why men will see, a woman on the street who's smiling or, just like really taking care of herself, and you just automatically are attracted and you don't know why, regardless of the age. But with younger women, just like children, right, just are more self-expressed. They're more alive. That's really attractive to the masculine.
Yeah, it's that radiance.
Yeah, that radiance. Absolutely.
We were talking about that there is value in, meeting different people and dating a few different people in order to just really understand what it is that, you want for yourself. So if a man is in a stage of his life where he's not ready to commit to a life partner and is more interested in, the adventure and self-discovery that comes through dating different people, how can he go about living that kind of life, but do so with integrity without lying or misleading women into believing that he actually wants something else?
Yeah, that's a really great point, because there are some people who don't have any desire to be in a relationship, or they don't have any business being in a relationship because there's other things to handle and experience in life. So, and I find that men are actually really good about this, in my experience anyways. Really great about being clear and upfront about, what, I'm dating right now. I'm not looking for anything serious. And, that's just how it is right now. And the interesting thing about that is where even when men will be totally upfront and clear and honest about that. A lot of women don't hear that, right? Because you want to also consider where women are coming from is that love and relationships is a top priority, right? That everybody wants that. And women think that men are in that same boat, which is not the case. So it's like almost like women have like rose-colored glasses or hearing, some kind of a hearing filter where it's like, okay, I heard that you said that and it sounds fine, but they kind of is like assuming, and I've definitely been guilty of this, is assuming like, okay, that's what you say now, but you'll come around. Like once you see what a great partner I am, you're totally going to want to be with me and not date any other girls. So that's a mistake that women make. They don't believe men when they say, look, I'm not looking for a serious relationship. I'd love to have fun and you seem like a great girl and let's spend time together. And at first they think, okay, great. Yeah, that's cool. But what they don't say, the women, is, yeah, I don't believe you. I think you're going to want a relationship. It's just going to be a matter of time and they'll wait.
You know what? That rings so true. I've been in that specific situation so many times. And you know what, to be honest, it actually, as a guy, it sucks because you see and you understand what's going on and you already foresee, what's likely going to be a painful breakup because you state where you are. And I have found a lot of women, they just don't want to hear it. They hear it, but they don't accept it.
Yes.
And so they wait for you to come around. And if you know that you won't, not because it's her, because it's you, because you're not ready and it's not what you want, as a guy, it's not a comfortable position to be in.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, as guys, is that what we're stuck with? Say what we feel and suffer the consequences, or is there a better way of handling it?
Yeah. So there's a couple things about that. The first one that comes to mind right away is what complicates this whole topic is intimacy. So where women, you could be going along spending time together and it's totally unattached and she's totally cool with spending time together. Intimacy is the thing that changes everything. So when a woman has sex, she has the experience of like a huge oxytocin dump, right? The hormones change completely and there is a sense of bonding and attachment that happens. And men don't have this, right? It's like men have sex and it's like, okay, we had sex. It's like nothing's changed. But the experience of it for the woman is this sense of bonding and connection. And then what comes with that bonding and connection is even more expectations. So even if the man has said from the beginning, I'm not looking for anything serious. I'm not looking for a relationship. And this is just sex. And the woman may even agree. And logically, she can see that. But biologically, having sex, for men who just want to keep things light and fun, having sex, you have to know that it changes all of the biology and all of the chemistry for the woman, where she will become more attached. So it's being responsible for that. And that if you want to keep things light and fun, and it really is just sex, which is great because there is actually a lot of women who are looking for that, which is fine. But if you're going down that path that looks like, a traditional relationship with a woman who, it does want more than that, then that's something for you to be responsible for as men. Is really getting that where women are coming from is relationships are everything.
And what's interesting you said is that there are women that are looking for something just light and fun. And I'm going to dare and insert my own opinion here, but I think just as guys walk around with this label attached to us that we're commitment phobes, I think women are walking around with a label of their own that portrays them as being these commitment-aholics.
Yes, completely.
And the reality is that, there are guys that want commitment and there are guys that want, and then there are women who want commitment and then there are women who don't.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
My personal philosophy is if you just maintain a level of honesty and transparency, then eventually you'll find someone who's on that exact same page as you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then when men can have some insight into, how the feminine operates and, the difference that sex brings to the dating process is just, gives you something else to be responsible for. So it's like, oh, well, it seemed like everything was great. And then we had sex and then she was like, became crazy or obsessive, or it's like, okay, because that's actually the biological process that happens. And that's why it makes sense for women, really being responsible for if you do want a relationship and if you are looking for something committed and monogamous and that sex has that effect on you, then really it just has you be more discriminating about, okay, or do you want to have sex outside of relationships, knowing that, it does complicate things for you. And that's for women to be responsible for as well.
So we've had a great conversation. We're starting to run a little bit low on time. So I wanted to ask you one last question. And that's if you could offer one specific, tangible piece of advice in the context of the overall conversation we just had that men could apply in order to improve their dating lives, what would that advice be?
One piece. That's so...
I know, there's so much.
I know, right? I think clarity is the key. I mean, when I work with people, it's always around getting clear first. So I think for men, where you have the most power is in going through the process of really looking at, okay, what are my goals? What do I want to accomplish? Whether it's a mission or a purpose or, the things that you want to get together around your career, is getting that handled first. So you feel really strong and secure in who you are. That is hugely attractive for any woman. So, and also for men who have concerns around confidence, that is hugely confidence boosting when you really get crystallized that sense of who you are and what you're up to in life. That's number one. And then if you've got that handled and you're full on in the dating world, you want to meet someone, then it's really getting crystal clear about that type of partner that you are really attracted to. So I find a lot of men are not actually really clear about what that is or what it looks like or, the kinds of qualities. So there's 4 domains that I have men focus on when I have these calls is, what's mentally attractive to you? What mentally attracts you? What physically is attractive to you? And this isn't like that every single thing is a must-have deal breaker. But just a general sense. Do you like tall, short, curly hair? Do you like athletic? Do you like supermodel build? Do you like boobs, butts, like legs, eyes, whatever it is? But what actually really draws you in when you meet a woman? And then the other 2 domains are emotional and spiritual. So how do you want to feel in this relationship? What do you want it to be like when you spend time together? Or how do you want her to feel? And then the last domain is spiritual, which may be religious and it may not. It may have nothing to do with that. But what is your view on the world? So what are you attracted to? Like a woman who thinks like anything is possible, or a woman who, is focused and going after her dreams. Like what kind of view on the world do you want her to have? So those are just a few domains to really get clear about who is this partner for you.
That's great. I think there's a lot of valuable advice in there. And if I was to emphasize one, just speaking from my own experience, it's that guys who are, trying to get better with women, focus on yourself first and get your life in order first. And that's going to help you exponentially. One last question. That's if guys want to get a hold of you to learn more about your services, where can they find you?
Yeah, there's a couple ways that people can get in touch with me. Facebook is always an easy one. My company page is Mars Venus Performance Coaching, or they can find me on my website. It's kind of a mouthful. Mars Venus Coach, Lesley Edwards. And Google's pretty good at rounding me up, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter or what have you. But my website and Facebook, those are probably the best ways to get in touch with me.
Okay. And you go by Lesley Edwards on your Facebook, your Twitter?
Yes.
Okay, great. And guys, if you didn't catch that, all of the information and links will be in the show notes. All you need to do is visit mensdatingmastery.com and it will all be right there. Lesley, thanks so much for joining us today. It was a great conversation. I learned a lot, and I have no doubt that our listeners have too.
Awesome. You're so welcome. It's such a great pleasure, Alec, being on the show.
Well, there you have it. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for the show, or if you'd like to recommend a guest, or even if you just want to say what's up, you can email me directly at alec@mensdatingmastery.com. That's Alec with a C. I love to hear from you, and I reply to every single email personally. If you enjoyed the show, then please take a moment to subscribe and leave a 5-star rating along with a positive review in iTunes or in whatever your favorite podcast directory is. That will go a long way to keeping the show going and help me attract the best guests so that I can continue to bring you value. Also, don't forget to check out mensdatingmastery.com, where you will find all the episodes to this podcast, my blog, and where you can subscribe to the newsletter to keep abreast of the latest content from MDM. And don't worry, I don't spam, I don't share your email with anyone. In fact, I don't even send that many emails. If I do, it's usually because I have some great new content that I want to share with you and that you won't want to miss. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to Men's Dating Mastery, a podcast dedicated to improving the lives of men and the women around them.